Hello, my name is Bradley and I'm your host of The Internal Game. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the ego, right? I know sometimes we can get confused and think that the ego is this like separate, dark entity that's trying to pull us back into the abyss while we're trying to make these changes. You know, like, man, I know I gotta get into a different identity and I'm trying to embody it, but this ego is pulling me back into the abyss, into the old story, right? Well, the ego is a mind-made self. A mind-made self, right? It's the reason that we're trying to remember that we're God, because we forgot, because we are living in a mind-made self, right? And so the egoic mind is literally identification with mind. Identification with thought, right? This is a very unstable place to be, right? Because it's not who you are. You are not your mind. You're not your thoughts. I've said it many times. I learned it from Eckhart. Like, thought needs consciousness to survive. Consciousness does not need thought. It doesn't, right? You are consciousness. You do not need thought. But thought needs you to survive. So if we are walking around identified with mind, we are in a really unstable place because we have forgotten who we are, or not remembered who we are. And it needs, the ego needs a past and a future to survive. That's why it doesn't like the present moment. That's why every time that you've ever tried to get present, your mind's like, no, we gotta think about this, or what if this happens? Because it cannot exist in the present moment, even though that's all there is. It can't exist there because it needs to be. And guess what? Past and future, where do they exist at? The mind. And guess what? Past and future is psychological time. Guess where psychological time exists at? The mind. Things that you have identified with. So of course you're like, oh, I have this identity based on my past, and this future holds this promise of salvation. So that's why I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to find this salvation in the future. So I'm watching all this manifestation content. I need this now. I need person to do this. I need this money. I need all this stuff. I need those stuff, so I can feel the fulfillment that I know is in the future. Because I'm looking around right now and I'm feeling like I'm not feeling fulfilled. So it must be something other than where I'm at and what I have right now. Illusion, okay? It's just identification with the mind. And think about this. Anytime you've ever tried to meditate, what does your mind want you to do? It wants you to identify with it so very strongly. And it's not that like this dark abyss place, this ego. It has a lot of momentum. I mean, I remember when I first started trying to meditate, I would sit down and because I was supposed to watch the thoughts, you know, and you're just like, okay, I'm watching the thought. And then it was like, did you turn the oven off this morning? Something that would really like get me to like, okay, I need to get up. I need to get up and go check this now. Even though I don't, it's just like the body and my whole way of life became so used to identification with every thought that came my way. So I had to believe it. And if you're walking around, identify with mind, and then you try to get in the present moment, it's going to try to pull you, right? But it's not just the negative stuff. It's everything that you have identified with in the mind. All of it. So, like, give me a good example here. Like the egoic mind, if you're used to identifying with mind and lashing on every thought, I could walk into my room right now, and actually I did earlier, and I saw there's a little stain on my jeans, right? The egoic mind, when you're in this kind of chaotic state, would have walked in the room, saw the stain, and be like, how'd the stain get here? How long's it been on there? Because I wasn't aware of the stain, right? But I was like, how'd the stain get here? How long's it been on there? Do I have time to get some cold water on it? I go in there, get some cold water. Okay, I gotta put it in the washer. Oh shit! Somebody stuff's in the washer. Who's doing laundry right now? Why is somebody doing laundry right now? I'm trying to wash my stuff. And then like, just going on from that. All from what? Just a little stain that was on the jeans, right? Like, because it's just identifying with each thought that comes with it. Oh, I gotta move now. I gotta do this. You might. Let's just say you're specific people oriented on these channels, and you're like, okay, I'm getting these thoughts that I haven't been setting boundaries. And I'm identifying with them. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I have been kind of just taking too much stuff actually, and I need to let them know. Yeah, I think I am gonna let them know. And you start arguing with them in your head, believing every thought, living in this thought world. And then you reach out, hey, listen, I got boundaries now, homie. This don't you ever 20 minutes later, because you're still believing thoughts like, hey, you shouldn't have done that, you kind of overreacted, and he or she's gonna think you're crazy. Oh my gosh, now I gotta, like, do you see where it takes you? They're just thoughts. But if you have been identified with the thoughts and your mind, you are living in instability. And if you believe that state of being has something to do with your life experience, then this is not the place to be identified with. Like, you are not your thoughts. You are not the mind. Like, you have a mind, you can have thoughts, but you are not these things. And the faster that you can realize this, the faster that you can, hey, actually say, you know, I'm just gonna watch these thoughts. Okay, I got a thought about SP, or I thought about like no money, or I thought about okay, that's a thought. I don't have to latch onto it. This is the only way that you're ever gonna find true stability, is like not identifying with the mind, because the mind is unstable. It has and so when you're trying to make these changes, like, oh, I'm trying to change into another identification with mind, right? I'm trying, like, you're going from one identification with mind to another one. You're saying, okay, I am usually a victim. I'm this. Now I'm in charge of my life, and and I'm beautiful, and I'm this, and I'm that. And then you have, again, trying to convince yourself of thought instead of just being, right? Trying to convince yourself of thought. Now you're trying to identify it with a different thought, a different belief system. And then you're still going to have the inner stability, or the inner instability, as long as you are identified with mind, because it doesn't want to be stable. It can't exist in the present moment. That's where the stability is. And the quote unquote ego can't survive if you just don't believe every thought that sends your way, or that you have. You do not want to be walking around scared all the time. You do not want to be walking around in inner chaos, because it starts with a little stain on the jeans, and then the next thing you know, you're walking. Who put this chair here? Because you're getting unstable, right? And then you get upset with it. That you got upset. All just from identifying with mind. Driving to work, this guy's an asshole. I react because I was identifying with the thought that I got. This guy intentionally tried to pull me over, right? That's what you're thinking. Or not pull you over, but cut you off. And then you've reacted, and you're like, in these communities, like, man, I shouldn't have reacted. And now you identify with more thoughts saying that you shouldn't have reacted. It's all just chaotic. You have to find a place where you say, you know what? I'm not going to believe these thoughts anymore. I'm just going to look at them. I'm going to put more of my attention in the present moment, because, like, that's where I'm at. It's not just some enlightened guru stuff and like the manifesting communities. Like, oh, hey, guess what? I get the present stuff, but like I'm a manifester. It's like, no, like you're in the present moment, right now, and you always have been, and you always will be, right? And so if, like, the Neville teachings that live in the end, what is the end? What does living in the end mean? It means that, like, live in the now as if you already have what you have, because guess what? There is no past and future, only in the mind. Only in the egoic mind is there past and future. Only in the psychological time of past and future only exists in identification with the mind. There's never been a past. There's never been a future. Ever, 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 ever. You've never lived there. You've never visited there. Only in the identification with the mind. That's it. So to live in the end is to live in the now as if you already have something. And guess what? There is no, there isn't one thing that you want or one thing you would like to experience that the safe, secure feeling, the fulfillment of the present moment isn't the end to. Because even if you want something and you're like, okay, I want this, because the ego likes to want more than it wants to have, because guess what? That's what it is. It's a wanter. It's a wanter. Because it can only exist when there's something to get. And it's always going to think there's something to get, because every time that you get something and you're still identified with mind, it's not going to be enough because that's not who you are. So you're going to feel like, oh, that wasn't it. I still don't feel fulfilled. I just thought it was this thing because I identified with my mind, and it was telling me like, oh, hey, I don't feel okay right now, so it must be that. And then I'm going to get it, but guess what? I still don't feel okay, maybe for a day or two. So it must be something else, and it's going to keep wanting and wanting and wanting. But the state of the present moment, the state of saying, hey, you know what? I'm safe. I'm fulfilled right now. I want for nothing. Doesn't mean doesn't mean you can't get stuff. It's actually quite the opposite. But because your state of being is being reflected all the time, your state of want is being reflected. Your state of need is being reflected back in continuous need. And to be in fulfillment of the present moment and to not fall for the illusion of this ego that is both negative and quote unquote positive, it doesn't matter as long as it's identification with mind, it doesn't matter. But to be present is to be fulfilled. And then guess what? Because everything's a reflection, guess what has to start happening? More circumstances that are fulfilled. The state of heaven is within you, right? The peace, the fulfillment, the bliss, it's all within. It's not in the mind. It's already who you are. But if you identify with the mind, it's hard to see that. Actually, it's impossible to see that. So yeah, granted, we can affirm, we can tell stories, things like that, but like ideally we want to do it from a place of already fulfilled. We want to use our mind, not let our mind use us. And our mind is always going to use us as long as we think that's who we are. As long as you get a thought that's something you don't want and you cling on to it and you start fearing it because you believed it, that's identification, because you believed it, then you're unstable. But if you can get thoughts and say, okay, that's a thought. And you can live your life, which is the best manifestation technique, by the way. We're talking about techniques. It's to just live your life and not obsessing over manifest something, but to live your life. And then when you think about something as if it's already done, because you're already in the state of already having, because you're just enjoying yourself in the present moment, you're not wanting for anything. You say, oh, you think about something, I want to experience that. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. But you can't do that as long as you're identified with the mind. Because as long as that's happening, you're not fulfilled. It is not stable. It is not peaceful. And even when you get said things, it will never be enough because the ego wants to want more than it wants to have. I promise you this. Think about how many times that you've wanted something, you got it, and you're like, I'm actually still not happy. That's why, spiritual teachers say, like, wherever you go, there you are. Eckhart with the relationships don't make you unhappy, they bring out the unhappiness that's already in you. We use them as a mask for a second to feel better when we meet these people and get them back. But then, if we're still identified with mind, we're like, oh, they must be doing something. Because I used to be happy, now I'm not. So like, I need them to do this. Or I need them to stop doing that. Or maybe I need a whole nother person altogether. All from identifying with the mind. Again, this does not mean that you cannot have your people, your money, or all that stuff. It's actually quite the opposite. But to be fulfilled within self and in the body, knowing that you are not your mind, and that like you don't have to identify with every thought that you get, is to find inner stability, inner peace. Is to be able to then tell stories of things that you want to experience instead of grasping at the need because you're fulfilled. Grasping at the need to have something right now because you're fulfilled. It doesn't have to happen right now. I mean, it will happen a lot faster, but you get what I'm saying. It's like you're good. But it starts with really knowing that you are not your thoughts. You can only do that when you stop believing them. You can only know that when you get out of mind for a little while and look around. Feel the safety right here. You say you want safety and peace, right? That's what you want. That's why you want some, right? You can find it right now. It's the only place you can find it, right here, right now. Because there's no stability in the past. There's no stability in the future. And to live that way with them being illusions, because there's only right now, is 100% unstable. And then what is reflected back? Your instability. If you're thinking about the past, All this whole thing knows is right now. So if you're thinking about the past a lot, you're creating it in the now. If you're thinking about the future with a bunch of worry and you're creating it in the now. There is no past and future, only mind. And when you look around for a second, sometimes just look around and fucking breathe and stop trying to obsess over something to get something for a second, you can realize, wow, I actually am safe right now. And that's what I wanted. And so now, from more of a place like this, I can tell these little stories about how I want things to be or want to experience, but I don't necessarily need them because you're not falling for illusions anymore. So that's what living in the end is. Being it now. Being it now. Claiming your desires now. And then not living in illusion of, oh, what does this mean? But like, it's so much easier to do when you get used to not identifying with thoughts. If you can get used to not identifying with the mind and not believing every thought, then you start to trust yourself. And then when you say, okay, this is how it's going to be, I want this, and I am this now, this is how it is now. Then when you get the complete opposite thoughts, you can say, oh, it's just a thought. You don't want to start trying to, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but like ideally you don't want to just try to practice not believing thoughts after you've already spiraled. You know, you don't play the big, if you're like the NFL or something, you don't play the big game, you don't only play the big game on Sunday, you practice. So you gotta practice not believing the thoughts, like just some conscious effort of, oh, that's just a thought, just a thought, just a thought. Start to disidentify with the mind. It's the beginning of spiritual awakening. It's the beginning of actually realizing who you are. And from there, you can actually use your mind instead of it using you. And the ego is not some scary thing. It's just a thing trying to survive, just like any disease or just like any living organism or species, whatever. Like everything's just trying to survive. It can only survive. The ego can only survive in past and future. That's it. And it's also unstable. And it's also not true. So get more present. Stop identifying with the mind. The present moment should not scare you. You're already living here. Except now you're not worrying. You can actually do some intentful stories instead of desperate stories. No, it's like this now. No, it's like this now. No, it's like this now. No, you can be like, okay. Actually, now I think I want to experience this. So thank you for XYZ. So cool now that XYZ is happening. And yeah, so cool. And then now I'm going to go live my day. Living in the end. That's all I got. See you guys soon.